help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. So we had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion. Donald Trump will return to the White House. And I'm sure the next day you woke up and you saw that he was already assembling his mini camps that he is going to put his political enemies into, just like he did in 2016. Actually, the sun came up and everything seems to be normal for most people. So that is the topic of today's podcast. We will cover some of the knee-jerk reactions, what the election means, what it doesn't mean, particularly, obviously, for the unborn and the pro-life movement at large. Many people are very happy about the election of Donald Trump. I am definitely in that camp. And some people are not happy. And we will discuss that as well. As a reminder, we will do a follow-up podcast with Steve Carlin next week to do a total deep dive on the election as it pertains to abortion. Steve, as you all know, is a complete borderline psychotic political geek, and he has been doing a lot of work dissecting specific counties, religions, races, different groups, and how they voted for or against abortion, since abortion was supposed to put Kamala Harris in the White House, and it did the opposite. And so we will do a deep dive of that on next week's podcast. And by the way, speaking of podcasts, if you did not listen to our Election Day podcast, it was on Planned Parenthood's internal struggles with their own workers, their disgruntled workers. We had Ramona Trevino on. She was absolutely fantastic. And I encourage you to go back and listen to that. I am working on an op-ed. It may be out by the time this podcast comes out that does a deep dive on that as far as what we can expect from President Trump and why Planned Parenthood is in the worst shape ever. And now they have Trump going back to the White House and what that means. So we will send that op-ed out. Also, final housekeeping thing, join us November 19th. You'll hear from our whole crew Tuesday the 19th on the What Now webcast. You will be able to watch that at 8 o'clock Central, 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, November the 19th. We will cover it all, including the beautiful results from the largest 40 Days for Life ever. So joining me on this election response podcast is Dr. Haywood Robinson. How are you?
I'm just blessed to be here.
You just got off a plane.
Yes, and proud to be an American.
Yes, okay. Proud to be an American. And also Ramona Trevino rejoining us. We got to calm her down. She's all fired up, and we'll get to that later. Ramona is wound up today. And one of the things that I discovered, what a great day to be a white guy and on this podcast, because y'all are the racists.
Oh, boy.
Finally. Congratulations.
I'm just excited to be allowed to sit here between two men.
So Haywood, as a black male, you're a misogynist. I need to correct this and get the proper terms. Ramona, because of your Latino descent, I apologize. You're a sexist and a racist. You double dipped.
I did.
So we will get to that. I actually want to start with that because let's start with the craziest responses because, okay, it was a bloodbath, and I thought it was going to be a red wave based on two things. She's a ding-dong and the Vegas odds. That's what I've followed. And Vegas is rarely wrong on elections. And basically in September, which I was kind of complaining about Trump because I don't think he did good in the debate. And there were certain things about his campaign that were really good and certain things that just seemed like they were getting distracted. And then late September, early October, the Trump campaign got it together And I think the Democrats made a mistake. They'd probably say this now, in that they succumbed to the pressure to make her do interviews and get out there, and she imploded. By October 6th, you can look at the Vegas odds if you want to. It totally changes starting on the 6th, and Trump goes to having a 61% chance of being elected. And then his campaign, the Joe Rogan stuff, the McDonald's, the garbage bags, all that stuff was gold. He handled it perfectly, and she got crushed. And the Democrats got crushed. And when this happened in 2008 with Obama, the Republicans were not able to be honest with themselves. So they said, well, we need to be more like Obama and run a moderate in Romney in 2012. And it really wasn't until the rise of Trump that it was like, you know what, maybe we just need somebody who's honest and is going to probably get stuff done because he got stuff done in the private sector. And the first responses, I was actually surprised at this. I think I'm a very naive person, and I didn't realize that. We will roll the clip of MSNBC because, unfortunately, we're still a racist and sexist society, and that's why Trump won. Roll it.
There are levels of sexism and racism that clearly a lot of people in this country are willing to tolerate.
So could y'all ever imagine, there's a funny clip in Seinfeld where he is going to have his first date with an Asian woman. And he says, my first date with the Pacific Rim, I'm very excited. and Elaine says, isn't that a little racist? And Jerry says, if I like their race, how can that be racist? And the crowd like erupts, right?
Isn't that a little racist?
If I like their race, how can that be racist?
So if Latinos, so he gets 28% in 2016, record for Republican. That goes up to 32% in 2020, record for Republican. He goes to 41% of the Hispanic vote, 21% of black males, unheard of numbers from any previous Republican. And as a result, it's not a message. It's not unity. It's not they're reaching out and they're attracting, and it maybe is based on policy or messaging. It's that now those groups are sexist and racist also.
Right. It's not that she was a poor candidate or you disliked her policies. We're all sexist and misogynist, Dr. Haywood, it appears. And my husband is the double whammy, both racist and misogynist, right?
And that's fine if it's like she wins Pennsylvania and Michigan and Trump barely wins Wisconsin and it's this neck and neck and she gets to like 271. It was a blowout. It was never close at any moment. And you can look, I mean, I love politics and I dive into all this stuff, but so they get the exit polls, the reporters, at about 3 o'clock our time during the day. But they can't report them legally until the polls close. And you could already start to see, because I watched the whole thing on CNN and MSNBC, which I think Mary Lisa was threatening to like leave me over. She's like, I can't do this. I'm like, this is the point. I want the honesty, right? And so you could already start to see that it was going south. So the fact that it's not close, why can't somebody just not be a good candidate and lose? Why can't we just vote for somebody?
Well, she was an exceptionally poor candidate. All we need to do is remember what happened since the time of the primaries. She was the very first candidate to drop out of the primary, and the reason she did right before the California primary was because she was going to lose in her own state. And the only reason that she was chosen as a vice presidential candidate was because President Biden blurted out, I'm going to choose a minority female, and that really narrowed that situation. So basically, she had what I believe was 2 delegates, which is another issue that we have to look at, the whole delegate process, which is something that the coup was able to circumvent to put her in the place where she was actually running for president. She is not qualified. She doesn't have the experience that we needed. She was so far left, so far progressive. Many Democrats separated themselves from her. So all we need to do is look at, are these people telling me that someone like a Condoleezza Rice wouldn't be able to win? Hillary Clinton would have been able to win if she would have campaigned just a little bit better. So no, let's stop making excuses. We had a very, very poor candidate that was anointed by a coup from Delaware that goes down to our president's home, puts their feet up on his coffee table, drinks his whiskey, and tells them, sign this, you're out, buddy, which was, and I'm not a Biden fan, but that was so dishonoring to a man who has served our country very well, maybe not in the same vein that I believe in, but he was dishonored. And the delegate process was dishonored. So unfortunately, we have a lady, an unqualified lady, who went through a process that was very dishonoring, and she lost. And it's as simple as that. We don't need to have the excuses about misogyny and racism. Why don't we just learn from the mistakes that were made?
Well, there's in the issues. So, which is what we're going to get into with abortion, because there's another demographic, and Steve is breaking this down, but I did a Fox interview on this, and that's the Catholic vote. So Trump he beat her by 9% of the Catholic vote. That never happens. We all know there's these nutty liberal Catholics that they don't care about the church's teaching on abortion. They just do whatever they want. And it's, a lot of the Chicago, New York, Boston.
Cultural Catholics.
Cultural Catholics. Yep. The greenie gave him the crucifix. So he won Catholics by 9%, which is crazy. And everybody says, well, the Al Smith dinner, she didn't go to that. Most people probably think that's pretty obnoxious. Everybody dressing up in a tuxedo or a
no
nice
one's paying
dress.
attention to
Nobody's paying attention. And she should have gone. That was a mistake because it brought attention to her that she could have gone and looked nice and, told a few jokes for 30 seconds and left, obviously written for her. And she didn't do that.
It probably did hurt her, though, too.
It did hurt her.
Because when the tension, even if you're culturally Catholic,
right,
you still hang on
you're
to that cultural identity, right?
Everybody goes to that.
Exactly.
And you didn't do it. Who do you think you are? I think it hurt her. It didn't 9% hurt her.
Mm-hmm.
And the exit polls show that Catholics, even liberal Catholics, said it was her abortion stance. That it was just over the top. And I think because she ran as abortion as a number one issue, which we've sat at this table and we've done a million interviews saying that's a mistake, it's risky at best to make this your number one issue. Mm-hmm. Americans don't want the culture war at the top of the ticket, for better, for worse. And she ran on that. And I think in previous elections, and I say this as a Catholic, it's like almost trying to beat down the door to make abortion an issue, and your liberal Catholics in church don't realize how crazy the other side is because they don't talk about it. Right. And they're very good. John Kerry said, look, I don't wear my Catholic faith on my sleeve, but I was an altar boy. And, but he's super pro. He wanted abortion at 40 weeks in Massachusetts. So it gets hidden. She highlighted it. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people, Catholics especially, who hear it at Mass but are like, I don't know, that's church teaching. But, we live in the real world. Well, the real world was abortion at 40 weeks and infanticide, and she was actively promoting that. They were doing abortions at the DNC, and that was encouraging for all of us to hear, that the exit poll of the Catholic vote was abortion was the difference. And you can't lose that vote by 9% if you're a Democrat.
I think another factor is that we have these celebrities preaching to us. About 100 miles from here, 3 weeks ago, we had Beyonce appearing with the presidential candidate, Harris, in something they call the Reproductive Freedom Rally. And I'm just insulted by the Oprah Winfreys who say, shout your abortion, the Beyoncés, and every single quote-unquote star that thinks that simply because they're in media or make a film, that their opinion has a significant amount of substance. In addition, with the legacy or lame brain mainstream media that's lost so much credibility in this race, I think we're also going to see that all these celebrities, from Oprah on down, that this whole thing about the dehumanization, they don't even recognize the humanity of the preborn child anymore. Kamala Harris, she says, the government's not going to tell us what to do with your body. Never do they use the plural bodies. We all know that we're dealing with abortion is just a word to them. It's just a procedure. We're talking about these celebrities, and they make us fascists or Nazis, but who are they? They're the absolute thing that they're accusing us of genocide against an entire people group and not even recognizing that they're human. So now maybe Oprah will get the message. Maybe people like Jamie Foxx, who said things like, our Lord and Savior, Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Well, and two, I was going to say, Sean, we're talking about breaking down all the ways in which they lost, why she wasn't, a good candidate, all the points that you make as well. And you asked, why they go with this narrative, right? Because that's the only narrative they have of racists and misogynists. Now they've thrown in the misogynist, which we all knew was going to come, right? But the media continues to divide the country on racism.
I've known you're a misogynist for a
I know,
long time.
right?
It didn't take the Tuesday last week.
It's internalized, Sean.
Oh, Ramona, right when her name pops in my head, I think misogyny.
Misogynist. And now you can add racist to that.
I'll add
as
racist
well.
to that as well.
But yeah, but that's the thing, is that they have to continue because they want the American people to believe that Trump is the one who's dividing the country. But it's not Trump who's divided anyone. It is the ongoing narrative that the media wants to feed the public, and now they have to keep up with this false pretense that we're a racist country, right? So now, again, they're going to continue to divide us by calling, black men and Hispanic men racist and misogynist.
So I want to look at this as a Kamala supporter. Okay, so everybody's like, I'm not listening to Beyonce, I'm not listening to Oprah, I'm not listening to... But Trump has his celebrities too. And so if they're going to say, well, yeah, but our celebrities are way bigger. I mean, we had Taylor Swift and we had Beyonce and all this. And they had some actors and they had Joe Rogan, substantive endorsement. Huge mistake by her. They had RFK. They had Hulk Hogan.
Oh,
he looks amazing. Ripped off his shirt. Is he 80? How old? Haywood.
He's pumped up.
I'm telling you.
Pump it up.
I'm telling you.
Kid Rock.
Kid Rock. But here's the difference, and you just highlighted it. Her celebrities are pushing abortion as liberation. It's depressing. Hulk Hogan and Joe Rogan, all these guys, it's on most of it free speech, freedom. It wasn't like demonizing. It was all like positive, best days of America are ahead of us. And this is the first presidential campaign I've ever seen, Republican or Democrat, where it was just a negative. Women don't have access to abortion. Trump is a Nazi. That was their whole thing, is that abortion and you're a Nazi. Who in the world in those meetings thought that was going to be a winner? There was never, you can look at every single Obama speech. He will cast certain people to hell. But by the time it ends, you're just like, I'll follow you anywhere, man. It's going to be great. The sun's coming up. He was so good at that.
And
even though people are
charismatic.
like, he's a horrible speaker. I'm like, you just don't like him. It's like the people that just don't like Trump.
Right.
The guy could give an ending to a speech where you're like, well, he's the greatest person in the world. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, but he just said that half America was, terrible. So he was very good at that. She wasn't. And she had a negative message. Her celebrities were lecturing us on that negative message. All of Trump's celebrities matched his supporters' rhetoric, which is, we just want to be left alone. We want to practice our religion. We want to have free speech. We are tired of inflation. We want somebody to talk about the issues on.
We want to be able to afford bacon for our kids.
Immigration was a huge topic, and this is the funny thing too. Now that you're a new card-carrying racist, is that so the rhetoric, and we did how well has the abortion immigration podcast aged? Because that was great, especially now because we have all the. But you made the point over and over, and we've made the point because we live in Texas with a lot of Latinos,
right.
And they don't like the open border. And the myth is that, no, they do. That's why they vote Democrat. And this was a big, like, screw off to that whole notion of just getting 41%. When I first heard that he could get 49% of the Latino vote, which they were saying 3 weeks ago, I was like, well, that's over. I mean, you just can't have that if you're Kamala Harris. He can't get half the Latinos. You know?
And not only that, but it was what, like 58% of the male Latino vote.
Yes.
Huge.
Yes.
So my Latino men came through.
Well, I got interviewed about this, and I was like, she made the mistake of making it about men versus women.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I'm going to say something really revolutionary here. Men like men, and women like men. It's true. The picture, I was studying this picture this morning, looking at the cover of Rifleman, the NRA publication, and it was the picture of Trump with blood going down his head, with his fist up in the air, with the Secret Service ducking down. That whole episode, that 30 seconds or 2 minutes of a man who's shot at and is fighting to stand up, what you saw was the essence of what a man does, a real man, with courage under pressure. There's no way they could rewrite that or suppress it, call him a Nazi or a fascist. This was a man who wants to lead the United States, and I could say, after he's won, my daddy can whoop your daddy.
Yeah, and it's basically all the crap that we hear about alpha males. And Trump looks at that and is like, nah, I'm not interested. You know, I'm not dumbing down who I am. You know, men like Trump because he's tough. And some men don't like him. But it just boiled down to he is such a good leader. He really is. People can say whatever they want about him, but you know, I hate the word coalition because it's gotten overused so much the last few weeks. We're all sick of it. But the amount of different people that he attracted into the campaign is unbelievable.
He attracted Americans.
But Americans that, you know, the blue-collar white male, Republicans could never get that. They were like the country club rich guys. And you know, he went in and he got all of those people. He increased the Latino vote. He increased the Catholic vote. He increased the Catholic, the black male vote. All that stuff. And your answer is right, which is, but he just attracted Americans. And we're not allowed to think that. We're supposed to think, they just hated Kamala. They hated her because they're racist and they're misogynists. And boy, that's a huge mistake for the Democrats if they keep that up. Maybe we should have a little compassion on them, you know, like the first week and they're kind of losing their minds. But I mean, Thanksgiving rolls around and Christmas and you kind of look up and, you know, immediately everything will go to 2028 or 2026. But you've got to reevaluate and be like, to me, this is a huge rejection of the transgender, the cancel culture, and all of this, everybody's a racist being. I really think that this was the first huge step of moving beyond all the garbage that was the fallout of 2020. And so with that, I want to go through a couple of things that we can cover. Number one, obviously the most pro-abortion presidential administration is gone. So that's what Biden was. That was the best thing. We will see what happens with the DOJ. We're suing the DOJ, so obviously this is, in theory, a victory. Trump has been a victim of the DOJ, as 40 Days for Life has been. We're suing them, obviously, on behalf of our volunteer, Mark Houck, who had his house raided by the FBI. But we'll see how that plays out. But certainly for free speech, things are looking up. So that's number one, is that the Biden-Harris campaign is gone and no longer in power, and abortion as a sacrament is going to end. If you were going to run on abortion and win, this was the only year you could do it. This is the first presidential election since the overturning of Roe. So this is it. This is your best chance. Men are evil. Trump's evil. Supreme Court's evil. Amy Coney Barrett's evil, Kavanaugh's a racist, they got rid of abortion, and now we're going to go and we're going to march and women are going to vote, and it didn't happen and it was never close.
There's one other factor that I think we should look back at the previous presidency of Trump. If we think about historically what the Republican Party was like, who was running? We had people like McCain running. We had people like Romney running. We had a divided Republican Party. And this guy named Trump, who wasn't invited to the country club, rides down the escalator, and there were a lot of Republicans against him. This guy has unified the Republican Party. They used to say there were MAGA Republicans. No, now that as if it were a subset. This guy has not only done an unbelievable comeback, but he brought together a party. The Democrats have always been together ideologically, and now we have an opposing party that looks like at least they're all on the same page.
Yeah, it was interesting because he wanted to defund Planned Parenthood. We're going to talk about that a lot next week. He wanted to defund Planned Parenthood in January of 2017. Paul Ryan and all those other useless Republicans wouldn't do it, and they all hated him. And now he's dealing with really a unified party, and it is his fault. It's been obviously everybody's going to be politicked out by Thanksgiving, if they're not already. But it's an amazing comeback on so many different levels, and
it is historical. Something I've never witnessed in my lifetime, to see his comeback.
Did either of y'all read Art of the Deal? Trump's book?
No.
I read it in like 2014. And I didn't know anything about him except I like The Apprentice and I like Home Alone 2. But it's I want to reread it now because when you read that, it's pretty amazing how he takes on New York, and New York's a disaster. He just falls apart. He gets divorced. He has bankruptcy, and then he makes his like huge comeback, and then he's bigger than he ever has been by the time he's The Apprentice. The Apprentice was the #1 show on television
for like 7 years, right,
or
or
7
something
years.
like that.
And it's just one of those. And that's what's the thing. I watched The Apprentice, and you're like, oh, he's cool or whatever, but man, he's probably a real jerk in real life. And then when I did that event for him in 2015, you're kind of waiting for him to arrive going, he's going to be a jerk. He's going to be a jerk. And then he was like the easiest, most gracious person in the world, totally down to earth. But it's a pretty big comeback. Okay, let's talk about Florida. So finally, the other thing that we learned is that these abortion referendas are not on autopilot where we pro-lifers show up and we lose, and that's all we do because the evil Supreme Court overturned Roe and our life is over. No, the pro-life movement won for the first time in Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota. I will reveal, I thought we would win in Florida and lose all the rest of them. Steve told me he thought we would probably lose in Florida and lose all the others. So he has a better grasp of this than anybody. And we won those 3. Obviously, 7 passed, so that's bad. But it was a little bit of like, you're just getting beat down in a football game and we like blocked a punt and scored a touchdown, to use a sports analogy, because we just had to stop the bleeding. And this stopped the bleeding. And again, we are 2 years past the overturning of Roe. The end of the world is still supposed to be happening. And this election between, obviously, Kamala running on abortion and getting her clock cleaned, and this abortion referenda winning 3 of them, it just shows the further away you get away from Dobbs, the easier and the better it will get for pro-lifers. We just got to put our head down and go to work.
Yeah. And Florida was a big win. I felt like just in the visits that I had during...
Y'all both... Yep. I went to Florida twice the last year. Y'all were in Florida...
I was supposed to be there again, but the hurricane hit... I guess it was Milton?
Yes.
That hit the day after I was supposed to arrive.
Yes, okay.
So I didn't get to go the second time.
I did about 10 cities in Florida right before the that amendment. And I had this feeling, and I shared that with the 40 Days team, there was a sense of a very strong Florida grassroots movement that you could only really experience unless you're there. But there was that groundswell, that feeling that these people are engaging the city councils. I was able to speak to one of the city councils there on Marco Island. But the people, the churches, our campaign.
Yeah.
They were really
The media gave us a lot of credit.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go out and say, hey, and brag on ourselves like losers. The media gave 40 Days for Life a lot of credit because of the grassroots efforts.
That's right. It was really wonderful to see. And I think we're graduating. We are waking up, and I think we're ready to move to a different level of offense. We've got to stop being reactive to these things showing up on the ballot. We have got to go on the offense in the same way that we've seen that Trump has gone on the offense. We are the ones that are standing up for these innocent preborn children. We've got to get out there and be ready to move our elbows and make a difference in areas of activism where we've not been before. And I'm encouraged and energized to see that happen.
I am too. And next week we're going to do a deep dive on these referendas, what we can expect. I mean, anytime after an election, people get excited, and the one thing we know is we always have some level of disappointment. But what we can and can't expect from a pro-life Trump presidency 2.0. We'll get into that next week because I have some predictions of what I think he'll do and not do. But that was such a huge victory in Florida because it's such a huge state. I don't think it surprises people with South Dakota and Nebraska, although Nebraska's a weird state politically, but because of Omaha. If you go to Lincoln, they'll say give Omaha to Iowa. It's kind of funny. So, and I think they're right. But Florida I could just easily see the people, and they get 58% or 57%, and they needed 60. I just didn't think that would be an issue. I thought they'd shoot up to 65, 66%.
I did too.
And I thought they'd go in there. Trump's very popular. DeSantis is very popular. And I think they were going to vote for Trump and then vote for abortion. That was my theory. But if we were going to win one, it would be Florida. Mm-hmm. What gave me confidence a week out was our campaign leaders saying we got a real shot. And they were
putting in the work, too.
They were putting in the work. But the poll numbers of Trump in the lead, and I'm like, what did he end up winning Florida by? 10 points? 11?
I don't remember Florida's. I just remember Oklahoma because it was huge. Florida was a little closer, I think.
I can't believe Harris did not win Oklahoma. This is an outrage. Those people. Okay.
The number is ingrained in my mind.
Oklahoma. Exactly. So we will get it. We're going to do a deep dive on those referendas next week and kind of look at what the future looks like, because this is their plan to go state to state. And I think it's going to put a hindrance on that plan because they were getting overconfident. They were undefeated. Mm-hmm. I think Kansas doesn't even count. I don't even acknowledge that because it was like 2 months after the overturning of Roe. It's confusing. I thought Florida was confusing, the wording. We have got to do better at the state level of wording these things. I know in Kansas, I read it, and I had to call Matt, and I'm like, how would we vote? And he's like, oh, yeah, it's the most confusing thing ever. Mm-hmm. They tied it into COVID. Like, you're going to have to wear a mask again unless you vote for free, like, healthcare freedom. And in there is late-term abortion, like not wearing a mask. I mean, it was brilliant if you want to lie to people. But I think we need to get better at wording that. Florida was not worded well, and we still won. So that's the most encouraging thing. Okay, the third thing we know, which we've already covered, is that everybody's a racist, especially Ramona's family.
Yep.
So we covered that. Is
it's going to be all right.
Is this now? So the word woke, I think, was like 70% serious, 30% you can make fun of it. Is it now flipped? I mean, it always like when somebody uses the word woke, how serious do people take that anymore?
I have no idea.
The sense that I get, the whole woke thing had a big tidal wave the way it hit. But I think it lost its momentum. I think it was a very transient thing, and the reality of it, that women's athletics, just the way people generally look at society is women and men. And yes, I accept people groups. I accept people with alternate lifestyles. But when it went to the point to where we were going to have to make certain compensations with changing the English language and people being forced to do things that they would not normally want to do. I think we can accept things if we just let this person live the way they want to live and let the other people live. But the whole notion of forcing things down people's throat is just something that we just don't accept well.
No, and they try to apply that to abortion, and it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's why we don't want the government forcing their policies on our bodies and all that. And yeah, but the policy you're advocating for requires us to kill someone. And we don't want to kill anybody. That's wrong. And that's where, when it infringes upon your rights to live, that's the limits. And, you know, it just, that whole thing, I think you're right, and the kids. But I saw a Democrat, he was a Democrat strategist, political strategist. And he said afterwards, of course, he said, Trump, we've got to get out of this woke nonsense and this transgender nonsense, because he said, I watched the Trump commercial because he's a football fan. And every NFL game, Trump hammered. I didn't see a whole lot of political ads because we're in Texas. I saw the Cruz ads, but like we didn't get a lot. But the Trump ads would come on during the Cowboy game, and there'd be like 1 million of them. And it ended with, Harris is for they, them, Trump is for you. And this Democrat guy was saying, that was brilliant. And he said, I watched it. He's like, I would never vote for Donald Trump. But he's like, it was inspiring and it was true and it was hard hitting. And it's like, this is the mess we've gotten ourselves into by marrying ourselves. They need to quit listening to the trans movement, and they need to quit listening to Planned Parenthood
for sure.
if they want to win elections, because this cost them big. Abortion was a political loser in this election, and it was supposed to be the bedrock of inspiration towards a free America, and it was a total disaster.
And the trans stuff hurt them too a lot.
Yes.
For sure. Like that coupled, like you said, coupled with abortion, total loser.
But they've been absolutely successful in the dehumanization of what this thing we call abortion. They now, I think, have the mindset of most people in the country. When you hear the word abortion, you do not think of a baby losing its life. You think of a procedure. They have now been successful in making people think that reproductive rights is a freedom. So what we are going to have to do is bring the humanity back to the preborn child. We're going to have to make people understand that this is just not an American thing. This is a global abortion genocide holocaust.
Right.
And that in the United States, we only have 1% of the global abortions. This is an unprecedented loss of human life, unprecedented in human history, of 63 million babies losing their lives every year. That's what they've been successful in diverting our attention from, and that's going to have to be our goal, is to make people understand this is a global genocide.
And totally detached from the election, we can say the same thing. It doesn't matter if Trump wins or Harris wins. This is a humanitarian crisis. So it doesn't matter if you love Kamala Harris or you love Trump. It doesn't matter. We all want to protect the most vulnerable. And those who acknowledge that those vulnerable exist do want to do it, Democrat, Republican alike. But the problem is what you said, which is we've so unnaturally dehumanized them and said, well, they don't even really exist, that we're just talking about, you know, that's what I was encouraged. I listened to the J.D. Vance interview with Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan is still using this very elementary thing, which is so good for us. We should have a lot of confidence. But he's like, I have a real tough time with religious men forcing their beliefs on women, which is like, if you've, you know, read What to Say When, or you just have any common sense, is like, this is like easy as, you know, J.D. Vance didn't do that great on it, but it was, you know, it's just, it's so easy to just knock out of the park.
Right.
That this is a biological, scientific problem. When do you want, when can you sleep at night and have an abortion? I have a friend who's a Catholic priest. He's only been a priest like about a year. This is the first presidential election. So the Sunday before the election, he gets up in the pulpit and lays it out, right? The full-blown pro-life, vote pro-life. Doesn't endorse Trump, doesn't, just lays it out.
Roll.
So I know. And he texts me, not to ask you a question or basically just like kind of a little mini rant. And he's like, this lady just berated me after Mass in front of all these people about not wanting to keep the government off of her body. And I could tell he was kind of wound up. So I said, yeah, but you can sleep fine at night, because she went in her car, she put on her seatbelt, and she stopped at every stop sign on the way home. She is having the government control her body, even in the car ride after she yelled at you. And it's so true. And kudos to him too, right? Because he could easily just say, I don't know, I'm a new priest, I'm not going to say anything. But we need that. And of course, on the other end, that helps with the 9% Catholic
And the
vote.
good thing is that more and more seminaries, more and more priests exiting and coming out of the seminaries are more vocal, because they're younger and they are more pro-life, more outspokenly pro-life.
So the last 6 months, I've had a lot of conversations with evangelical leaders, and there's an evangelical publication that's doing a feature on 40 Days for Life. So I say this to my Catholic friends, and they don't really get excited, but the Protestants get excited. And that is, there's like a revival going on in the Catholic Church, and the younger priests and the seminaries are full, and there's this sort of blossoming, not in Philly and Boston and New York, but in the South, Nashville, Charlotte, Little Rock. Vocations are booming. The churches are full. I mean, in Houston, where my kids, the parish connected to our kids' school, is 10,000 families.
Wow.
Because Catholics are weird. We don't do members, we do families. So it's 10,000 families. The Woodlands, what is that, 13 or 14,000 families at St. Anthony of Padua?
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
so you go to these places and the churches are packed, and sometimes we just get so down on the church, little c or big, and it's like, I don't know, that you have to look at it in certain regions, and I know for Catholicism, compared to the mid-'90s, it's just absolutely booming in America, and it's encouraging.
Now, another thing we're also seeing is on numerous campuses all around this country, revival is breaking out.
Yes.
For what reason? Other than the Lord is making a presence in these campuses, and it's making a difference. I don't know if the same thing is going on in, Catholic campuses or whatever, but campuses that aren't religiously associated, it's just breaking out baptisms of hundreds of students.
Well, look
It's
at
just
Texas
amazing.
A&M. Look at the student centers. Look at the Christian student centers at Texas A&M. Look at Grace. Look at the United Methodist Student Center. They're huge here. Look at St. Mary's. It's the largest Catholic center in the country. They have, 400 or 500 kids at daily Mass? There's 11 opportunities a week to go to confession. It's very, very encouraging in the vocations and the revival. And this was another criticism of Trump winning. And we actually predicted this too, which is Generation Z is going to surprise people. And they did.
They did.
And that study came out in 2023 that said the senior class, the class of 2024, those high school kids are the most conservative senior class in the history of when we've kept up with it, which is back to the 50s. They're the most conservative because they went in as freshmen during COVID in 2020. So they're like this mistrust of government, like the hippies, except they fall on the conservative side, not on the liberal side, like the baby boomers did. So it's really funny.
I hadn't thought about that, Sean, but I'm thinking about my nephew who graduated in 2020, and he is the most outspoken,
crazy.
conservative kid.
Trump
I'm like, where did that
flags.
come from? Like, he was texting me the other day, like, I've got red, white, and blue pumping through my veins, and I'm like, what is going on here? And I hadn't made the connection between that and them going through COVID and getting their graduations taken away from them. He did, all of it. Like he had like all of these things that he waited his whole life to experience, right? And his senior year in high school, it was gone.
I look at my teenagers and I look at like my teenagers' friends and the kids in their school, and I mean, I'm sitting here going, I don't think Generation Z is gonna, totally, round the block lining up to vote for Kamala. I mean,
And I don't think it helped that she called them all stupid either.
No. Oh my gosh. They're very smart. They're very intelligent people, and they voted the right way, frankly. Okay. One other thing that I want to pick up on. So we covered that abortion for Kamala did not pan out like she was hoping it would. But this is where we're done with this 2022 nonsense where abortion's a political loser. That has been laid to rest. I will say that. Maybe I'll be proven to look like an idiot in 2 more years. But pro-life candidates had huge nights in the most conservative pro-life states. So the theory is that if you have a heartbeat bill, you got an abortion ban, you're a Neanderthal, and you're going to get voted out. Because they all look at Dr. Oz, who was the worst candidate ever. Shocker. He lost to a guy in a hoodie. So they look at that and they say abortion's a loser, but they won't look at Governor Kemp or Abbott or DeSantis in 2022. Well, when you look at here, you look at states where pro-lifers should be vulnerable, Georgia, Texas, Florida. The pro-life candidates, our most pro-life candidates, won by huge margins. And please, for the love of all that's holy, can we have these people quit telling us that Texas is turning blue? It has gotten redder every freaking year that they have said that, because the lunatics, or I would say the great people who live amidst the lunatics in California, wanted Texas to stay Texas, and they didn't come here to evangelize the rednecks who live in the sticks. They came here because they like our values. Cruz destroyed that dude. And Governor Abbott 2 years ago won, handedly with the heartbeat bill.
Which was a huge relief to see Cruz win, because there for a little bit I thought, uh-oh.
I thought Cruz was in trouble, and a lot of Cruz's people convinced me he was in trouble, and he won by 10 points. Mm-hmm. And what did Trump end up winning by? 8 or 9?
He had a good margin too, but I just remember the final numbers for Cruz. I think it was like 6 million to 4 million or something like that.
Yeah. It's just,
and it wasn't like that early in the night. It was neck and neck.
I mean, I live in a very highly populated county, and it would be suburbia Houston, okay? And it's conservative, but it's still like major city, and Houston's crazy. 78% Republican. I just pulled it up before we did this, because I'm like, I was thinking it's probably 58%, like a normal, It was 78%.
Well, did you see where it was like in I think it's Starr County in Texas, border towns, like 97% Latino, and they all voted Republican?
You know why?
I know. We're a bunch of
racist. And misogynist. And misogynist and voting for Trump.
Not only racist, but misogynist too.
The racist, misogynist Latinos make the best salsa.
Yeah.
Let's just
and tamales.
And tamales.
And tacos.
Yeah, they're not all bad. We shouldn't just cast them all off to hell. Wait till you try the verde salsa. Oh, my word. So that's just good news, because there's a lot. And once we get Steve in here, we'll get a full breakdown of all these. He's probably analyzing like the mayor of Dubuque, Iowa, and how many evangelicals voted for him. So we'll get a lot of stats in here. But when you look down ticket, it was very, very good for pro-lifers. Okay, the last point, and this is a good takeaway, just I think for American politics in general, which is that officially I think we can say, I know the Democrats have to be saying it, the media and money can't win you an election. Mm-mm. She had $1 billion. They still went into debt by 20 million. So Trump spent 300 million. She spent $1 billion. That's policy. That's not there aren't enough racists, even if everybody was racist, there's not enough racism or misogyny or anything to make up $700 million.
Right. Well, and the other thing that we need to look at is the role that Elon Musk played in all this, in buying Twitter. Because that is how America saw, that's what kept the finger on the pulse of America, was being able to actually see through X.
Is that a real thing?
I believe it is.
I hear it and it sounds nice.
I believe it is.
I'm like, is that a real?
I believe it is.
And I look at myself, I get all my news through Twitter.
I believe it is, Sean, because prior to buying Twitter, everything was suppressed and censored. So a lot of times what happens is this psychological thing, right? Where people, they think they're in the minority. And so they kind of give up or they don't go out and vote because they think, it's not going to make a difference if I do go out and vote. But what happened with Elon purchasing Twitter is that for the first time we were able to refute the media's claims that Trump, said this or Trump said that. Because I watched some interviews with black men who were saying all of this time, the whole fine people thing hoax, that believing that was true because that was the lies that he was being fed by the media. And then he finally saw the real full clip, uncensored, on X. And he said, that's what changed my mind. That's why I'm voting for him now, because I know it's true. I know it's all lies. So now all of these lies have been exposed, right? Because nothing is censored on X anymore. And then you have people like, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris who are literally saying, we need to go after them. And I mean, even somebody like on The View, I don't remember her name. She's saying, well, the problem is that we need to regulate these social media platforms, because the thing is, they don't want us to see the other side. They don't want us, they only want to feed us one perspective. And so I think that was huge, especially when you have someone like Joe Rogan who had like 35 million downloads of Donald Trump's interview.
It hit him.
I think that first day was like 35 million versus like some morning show on CNN or whatever that's like the viewership's like 200,000.
But it beat the Super Bowl.
But that's
Joe
the power.
Rogan had a Super Bowl in his studio.
Wow. But that's the power of these podcasts and these independent voices. And so I think that had a huge, it had a huge impact on the election results because people could see, wait a minute, maybe Trump isn't so bad. If all of these people support him, and obviously they were able to see truths and lies that were refuted, and they were able to see that and realize, okay, well, maybe I'm not alone. Maybe I'm not in this crazy camp where, I'm some sort of racist person who votes for Trump. And they had really the courage to go out and vote for him because they could see that the majority of America was voting for him,
I mean, if we think about the margins that Trump lost the last time and recognize that he was shut out of major social media outlets, if he would not have been shut out, then he would have won. Mm-hmm. I mean, what was it, Wisconsin? He lost by, was it 20 or 30,000?
And then 11,000.
And social media has a grand influence. So, it's interesting you mentioned Elon. He was such a fantastic person. He make these electricity cars that we could all run around in our battery-operated cars. And soon as he started talking about free speech, he's the devil and the Nazi, and
everyone's trading in their Teslas.
Well, I don't like Teslas. Like, it's just a preference. I wish I did. I'm like, I want an excuse to support Elon besides having a Twitter account. But I'm like, I want to go buy something that he makes, but I can't afford a rocket, and I don't want a Tesla.
And we don't want a personal robot.
Yeah, if I can't afford, I don't even know how much a Tesla is.
Oh, but did you see that rocket when it was coming down? And then
it was like it was like a barbecue. Like it just landed. It was so beautiful.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable. Oh, unbelievable. Kamala couldn't land anything. So one last thing on the Twitter thing, he got rid of all the bots. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that would happen if you feel like, I can't say anything, is they would say, America's a racist country. Somebody tweets that. So then the bots come in and they retweet that 1 million times. Mm-hmm. So it looks like, oh, everybody believes this. I guess maybe I'm one of the racists, And so it really was, he just cleaned it up. To your point, I mean, Zuckerberg apparently, I don't know if he got a conscience or what, but he's the one that admitted that they had silenced all the Hunter Biden stuff and all that stuff. But I just think, and I think hopefully we see this tone out of the Trump campaign. Hopefully it continues. I think it will, of just moving on and it being positive. And his first message cracked me up about the 250th birthday that we're going to have for America. It's going to last. It's not going to last a day. It's not going to last a week. It's going to last a year. And we're going to have a lot of people come over. It's going to be fantastic. And so that's just like Happyville, right? Because then we're getting away from Democrats, Republicans. We're celebrating our 250th year. Most people probably didn't realize we were going to be 250 years old next year. So it's going to start Memorial Day of 2025 and go into 2026, and that's going to be our 250th year. But it is.
We're not invited because we're racist.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
you're not invited,
y'all
Sean.
can dress up as the Confederate soldiers and protest outside, okay? And we know you get
I
out
haven't
the
quite
old...
decided yet. Who's not invited? You or us or who
None of
knows
us.
these days? We're
None
all
of us.
racist.
Nobody's invited.
We're all racist.
We're going to have a bunch of Europeans here.
This is why we're sitting at the table, because Sean's trying to prove that he's not a racist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because this is the one time that being a white male, heterosexual is acceptable, because y'all filled the gap.
And you've got the
racist.
double whammy here. I'm a female and I'm Hispanic.
Oh yeah, and that's why
DEI check.
That's why MSNBC said that not only are you a misogynist, you're a racist too.
Yeah.
So
True diversity.
congratulations to Ramona on her new racism. Okay, as we close out, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping things, since there's a lot going on with 40 Days for Life. Demand for 40 Days for Life continues to be at an all-time high, and we will be breaking down not only in next week's podcast, but also on the webcast on November the 19th, how the future is very bright for the pro-life movement. It's not bright because Donald Trump got elected. That's certainly part of it, and a cherry on top right now, but it's because of what's going on in the grassroots. There's a lot of trends that show how much Planned Parenthood is in trouble. We also see just the rapid growth of 40 Days for Life and the local pregnancy resource centers. And we are seeing in some of these states, and we'll talk about it, how they're passing these pro-abortion referendas, but it's not going to matter because most of their abortion facilities are on the verge of closing. And so we will get into a lot of that. It is a beautiful day in America and around the world, because the pro-life movement is booming at the grassroots. So this is very, very positive, and we will be getting into what politically to expect from Trump. He is not the savior of the world, and he is also not the devil. He is, in fact, the most pro-life president on record that we've ever had. He is not a perfect pro-life candidate, because those don't exist and never will. But he is definitely the best that we've got and the best that we've ever had. And I am optimistic about what he can do as a pro-life president. And I'll share my expectations of what he won't do also in next week's podcast. So be sure to check that out, and be sure to go to the website and register for the What Now webcast. That will be a video webcast. You can watch it on Tuesday, November the 19th at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to tune in for that. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Thank you, Ramona. And we know they're not racist. They're not misogynist. They're just good Christian folk.
We promise.
That want to save America and save the unborn. There's nothing wrong with that. So be sure to rate, review, and share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.